meeting of the Franklin City School Board to open, and thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. We have several motions from our closed session. Do we have a motion to approve our personnel agenda and our personnel addendum with modification for number 8?
Do we have to move to come out of closed first?
I move to come out of,
I move that the school board, having been in closed session pursuant to a proper motion, come out of the closed session.
Thank you, Carrie.
No problem.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Certification.
Do we have a motion for certification?
Whereas the Franklin City School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. And now therefore be it resolved that the Franklin City School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion for certification signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Again, welcome to everyone. Would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, do we have motions for closed session?
I move that we approve the personnel agenda with the omission of number 8 and the addendum to the personnel agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Another motion.
I move that we approve the field trip request for the state cross-country meet.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries. Do we have a motion to approve the 3 non-resident students?
I move to table that till next meeting.
Table the non-resident.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Do we have a motion to approve our agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a second.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Roll call. Ms. Davis.
Ms. Boone,
Present.
Ms. Council,
Present.
Ms. Parker, Mr. McQuarrie, Mr. Holt,
Present.
Ms. Powell,
Present.
Ms. Johnson,
Present.
Dr. Carter.
Present.
Thank you. Item 3.1, our consent agenda. We have several minutes to approve minutes for July 20th, minutes from August 3rd, both second readings. Do we have a motion to approve those, or do we need to take them separately?
I'd like to take those separately, please.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve item 3.1, minutes for July 20th?
I move to approve the minutes from July 20th.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention.
I'm sorry, what was that for 3.1?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve 3.2, work session minutes, August 3rd?
I move to approve the minutes from August 3rd, 2023.
Second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor of those minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Item 3.3, minutes for August the 17th. First reading. We'll vote on those at our next meeting. 3.4 are the minutes for September the 7th, also first reading. Superintendent's report. Dr. Carter.
Dr. White?
Good evening again, Board. Tonight I bring to you a policy. It's going to be a local policy. It's policy JFCK, Personal Communication Devices. We did previously have an older version of this policy. However, we wanted to update it. You'll notice that the VSBA no longer has a policy concerning communication devices. Instead, it's built into the policy for electronic use. But the policy committee wanted to have some clear detail to parents as to how, what would happen if students brought their cell phones to school and when they could use their cell phones. So you will find within the policy folder a red line copy, which will include the older policy, and then you'll also find a black line copy. Any questions? And this is being presented for your first read. All righty, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White.
Ms. Morrison?
Dr. Carter, School Board, good evening. Tonight I'll be presenting our October 31st, 2023 financials. First, we have the general fund, which shows that we have taken in 31% of our revenue and only expended 29% of our expenditures. And as of the end of October, 4 months or 42% of the year has gone by. Next slide. Very little activity in the textbook fund so far. The local other line on the nutrition fund is lower because of the timing of reimbursement request. Then the next slide. Here we have federal grants, and the roof project is included in this slide. So the deficit we have is due to the reimbursement requests for the roof that have not been paid yet. Okay. And overall total, that means we have taken in 25% of our revenues for the year and expended 31% of our expenditures. Questions? Okay. Next, what I have for you is the October 2023 vouchers. Ms. Davis, if you'd flip through those.
Any questions on the vouchers? Tracy.
Ms. Morris? Are you going to go through your rest of your report? Budget adjustments?
Yes.
We have some budget amendments to present this evening. The first one is new grant awards, and this is where we've gotten new grant money appropriated to us. The second one is grant carryovers.
Just a second, let me flip out of this one because there's several, okay?
And you'll notice that stay on that for a minute. You'll notice that the city had originally budgeted us for $3.127 million in federal funds, but we didn't need that much. So on the second page, I'm having them take the 3.127 out and replace it with the actual new revenues that we received. And I recommend that we approve this budget amendment as presented.
Do we have a motion to approve the budget adjustments?
I move to approve the budget adjustments as presented.
Second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries.
This one is a repeat. The city did not enter the first go-around of this, but this is the grant carryover. So the last balances of year 2023 carried over into the beginning of 2024. And once the city makes these two entries, our budgets will be in balance. So I move to recommend to approve this as presented.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve this as presented.
Second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That motion carries.
And the last request I have for you this evening is, this is a letter to the school board, a notice of intent to request carryover for 2024. Our ending fund balance was $891,511, and I'm recommending to the city that they approve that for carryover, although they are not obligated to do so. We have open encumbrances from last year of $308,655.75, and I'm proposing that the remaining unreserved fund balance be used for capital improvements in year 24. And then here I have the resulting budget amendment entry.
Do you have any feel for what they might do with this? Have they said anything at all? Okay.
Haven't we had discussions in the past where any carryover was supposed to go for capital improvements?
Yes.
I thought we
Yes.
had kind of an agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
But the city is aware of these open encumbrances, and they're also aware of my intent to request this rollover.
Okay.
Okay.
I recommend that we approve this as presented.
Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank
you.
Ms. Tompkins.
Good evening, Chairman Holt, Vice Chair Boone, school board members, Dr. Carter, and all of those assembled here today. I have the pleasure of presenting our Q1 data review. Next slide, please. As you can see, this is our fall's PALS data. We are required by law to present to screen all of our students in pre-K through 3 on any reading difficulties they might have. The screening window for pre-K is going to be later in the month, so they have not completed their pre-K screening. But what we do have here are the students who are identified which means students who have the potential to have reading difficulties who did not meet the state benchmark. This is the percentage in right now for fall of those students. In kindergarten, there's 27% of our students who are identified as needing extra remediation and support. 77 of first graders, 78% of second graders, and 67% of our third graders. If you take a look at kindergarten, you probably are wondering, most of the kids come in ready to learn. Well, what ends up happening is that in kindergarten, they get credit for phonetic spelling. That means that their score can count for them as not being an indicator of reading difficulty. When they get to first grade, phonetic spelling is counted against them. They have to be able to spell the words correctly. So that's what happens. So they give some room for phonetic spelling in kindergarten. They do not give that same leverage in grades first through third. So when we have students who are still spelling phonetically, by the time they enter first grade, it shows up as them having some difficulty and needing reading intervention. And I'll talk a little later about the interventions our students receive based on this PALS data. Next slide, please. And please feel free to ask any questions as
Before we go to the next slide,
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
We do have the tutoring program, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Are they just implementing mathematics, or is it also for mathematics and reading?
So there are several things that are happening.
Okay.
For reading, students have what we call PALS tutors that we get state money for those. Those reading interventions are happening within the school day.
Okay.
Our reading specialists, which we have 3 at the elementary school, work with our students who have the greatest need in grades K through 3. We also have 4 reading tutors that come to SP Morton every day to work with the next level of students who have reading difficulty. With the All-In grant, we have additional monies for reading tutors who will be coming into the building. Our Tutors for Teachers program is an after-school program for reading and math for grades 3 through 5. That's every Tuesday and Thursday. So we have multiple tiers of programs that are happening within our building.
I understand what you're saying, but to be honest with you, what I'm hearing is grants, grants, grants. Do we have enough supplies for these teachers to actually adequately help the students?
Yes, ma'am.
I talked to Mrs. Carter today, and she said she has plenty of books. She just,
Are they being utilized?
I think, I don't know. We're really just starting out this year, but I think we lost a couple people, didn't we, Ms. Tompkins?
Yes. So
And-
right now, in full transparency, we do have some concerns when teachers are out and getting substitutes.
Right.
And when those students are having to go into one classroom, that does impact a teacher's ability to implement the small group instruction, those reading strategies, because it's not just about having those books. The teachers have to really understand, and we're moving into the science of reading. How do kids actually learn to read? And that's the things that we're providing professional development to help them learn that. But when you look at the reading deficiencies that our kids have, as the data has indicated, our teachers need specialized training, and we're working to shore them up to get them the training that they need to improve outcomes for students. The good thing is that we have another set of data that will come out in January to show, are the interventions that we have in place, are they working? Where are deficits? So in January, we have another set of data sets that will come, and we're hoping that the number of identified at that time will decrease.
Okay.
I think the people that we employed or approved tonight will help this problem, because some
Yes,
of
sir.
them are involved in this.
Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
it's my understanding that you do PALs yearly.
Yes.
So have you all looked at the data from last year? So as to compare the scores from the students like that are in second grade, what the first grade scores were, so that we can see like if it's 78% of second graders, what was it last year? Like has that number gone up or down? I understand we might not have all of the same students, but Franklin's kind of small and we don't have a whole lot of turnover. So we
Right.
have pretty much the core group of students that we're dealing with.
Yes. So those numbers are high as well. I don't have the exact numbers, but when we compare, that's how we know which students to test in the next grade, is looking at their previous scores. So those numbers are significant as well.
Right. I would just, I'm curious, like, for the second graders this year, you're saying 78% of them are at risk of reading difficulties. If I looked at first grade last year and it said 83, that 78 wouldn't be as scary. But if I looked last year and it said 67, then that 78 is going to be a little bit more alarming.
Yes.
So I'm a little curious to see like what it's looking like. Are we trending upward or are we trending downward? Are we getting better or are we like not?
Right now, according to the data, we're staying about the same. We're kind of flat. I do know what you're saying, and we do have that data set. We would have to bring that back to you to show you the comparison between what cohort of the
Gotcha.
cohort of students and how they performed last year. We just did not bring that to you tonight, but we have that data available and we are tracking it.
Gotcha, but what you're saying is that we're just kind of stagnating.
Yes.
We're not really moving.
Yes, ma'am.
So Ms. Tompkins, can you bring it back? We'll bring it back in December.
Yes.
Just so that they can see, and then
Yes,
by
sir.
that time, we can transition into January, and we'll have updated data after that.
Yes, yes, thank you. Any other questions about PALS before we move forward? Okay, next slide, please. So this, for the first time, we have what is called STAR Data. It's a part of, it's a Renaissance learning platform where we are now looking at data. It's a universal screener. So this data shows us that in terms of the percentile, we're looking at how these students perform when compared to others in the same grade level. And as you can see, this also shows that we're having some reading difficulties for our students in grades 3, 4, and 5, as the data will show. Typically, you want your students to fall within the blue, be between 25 and 39 percentile, and or at or above 40 percentile to show that those students have grade level mastery. And right now, what we're showing is the majority of our students fall within the below 10% percentile and between 10 to 24 percentile. So it's consistent with what we're seeing with our PALS data, that our students are having reading difficulties and we have to put some interventions in place to ensure that they learn and grow. Next slide, please. We also have this universal screener for math, and what you will notice from this is that the students performed the same in math that they did in reading. Same students, same level of performance. So our students are having, in particular in third grade, who are coming out of second grade, are having reading and math difficulty.
Is this test largely word problem based or is it just computational?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
And so students who are struggling to read and understand the question would also have some struggles with this assessment.
Is there anything to assess if they have the computational knowledge, and if it's just a reading barrier, or is it a mathematical skills barrier?
So I think in looking at the data, it's a combination of both. It's a reading deficiency, but it's also a computation. Once we look at the performance by question, it shows equal, but this is just how the report in terms of showing you the percentile rank. But if we were to pull out the data, which we have for all of our students, you see that it's equally a computation as well as a reading issue. In Tier 1 instruction, good instruction the first time is what is our cure for this kind of performance. We have to have great teachers in every grade level to ensure that our kids get the best opportunity to learn. Any other questions?
I know we've used PALS for years, but is STAR relatively new, or have we?
STAR is relatively new. This is from what I understand, based on the need for us to have a universal screener in addition to PALS, and this was a platform that was chosen before I arrived.
Well,
And
they're
it's a part of
consistent,
the comprehensive
so
needs
that's a good thing.
process. Yes. So it just gives us another data set to show us where our kids are, because I truly believe that in order for us to confront the brutal facts, we have to know what they are, and we cannot correct it if we don't know specifically what our kids and where their deficits lie. And this data gives us that, although unsettling as it might be, this is data that we have in the beginning. So we know exactly where we're starting out, and we're not waiting until the end to know where they are. We know now, relatively early in the school year, so that we can begin to implement those strategies and those interventions that they need to help them improve.
I do appreciate the way that you worded it, brutal facts, because this is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's much better for us to be transparent as soon as we have it.
Yes, yes, thank you. Next slide, please. And this shows us our math for 4th and 5th. As you can see, we're still trending in the red and yellow area. And we also have to take into consideration that it's going to take a few years for our kids to recover from the academic loss due to COVID. This is not a 1 or 2 year fix. This is going to be a multi-year and multi-tiered intervention process. Great teachers, great interventions, and constant revisiting the data to ensure that we know precisely where our kids are and how to intervene. Okay. Next slide. So let's take a look at our benchmark. If you look at the 22-23 English SOL pass rate for SP Morton, it was 55% pass rate. If you look at the data that shows us that 70 points would say if these students were to take an SOL right now, with 70 points being our 400 score for SOLs, this is how our data would look if we were to take the SOL assessment right now. Based on Q1 benchmark, in 3rd grade you see 26% passed, 32 in 4th, and 18% in 5th.
But if they took an SOL test, it would be based on the whole year?
It would be based on the
Okay.
whole year.
So these aren't as bad as it
Right,
looks?
so based on right now, these are based on SOL standards. This particular assessment, when you have PALS, it's more of broad phonics and phonological awareness. When you think about our STAR, it's a universal screener showing us data reading over time. This is simply focusing on the SOL standards for the state of Virginia.
I have another question,
Yes.
and I'm sorry. But is in fact Enrichment Friday helping us or hindering us? Because with the week being short, we're losing time for the students in the actual classrooms. So, wow.
So Ms. Boone, there's seat hours, and so the Monday through Thursday, the day was extended.
Right.
The
But
hours of the day.
If you look at Friday in Richmond, the children are given an ultimatum. They can come or they don't have to come. And I'm not saying this, but I feel this way. The majority of them that are not coming are the ones that we need to reach out and honestly need to also help. That's just my opinion. Being said, it just needs to be mandatory.
So here are two things. One, last year we passed out a survey
Right.
to the community.
I remember.
And you remember what their
Yes.
overwhelming response was, that they still wanted enrichment Fridays, and that was
Right.
through the community. The second thought process is our balanced calendar, our year-round.
Right.
So that should solve that issue right at that point. And I'm also looking at moving Wellness Fridays to Mondays, which will also increase seat hours.
Wait,
There's,
say that again?
Yeah, explain that
Yeah.
for us.
okay, so you know the majority of the holidays are on Monday.
Right. Okay.
If I move enrichment Fridays to Mondays, or Wellness Fridays on Mondays, you have the time off anyway.
Because it's a holiday.
It's a holiday.
Okay.
So that means Fridays will be in school, which will increase, we did the math, it will actually increase seat hours.
So actual seat hours where an individual is actually sitting and having instruction.
Time and instruction in the classroom, in the chair. That's what they mean by seat hours.
No, I understand
No,
that
no,
part,
okay.
because I'm also listening to, this is not something we're gonna fix tomorrow. This is not something we're gonna fix in a year. This is not something that we're gonna fix in the next 2 or 3 years. This is actually, I'm listening.
Well, I wanted to show this early, and you know my philosophy. It is what it is.
It is.
And we're showing you now, and so we're going to work aggressively to improve these numbers.
That's what I wanted to hear, working aggressively, not just from you, not just from you, not just from every single staff member that's here, but everyone in general, meaning the teachers also, because I was raised where it takes a village for children, not just for, unfortunately, parents bringing children to school and dropping them off and that's it. And then when they go back home, they're not learning anything because unfortunately parents can't read or write or anything else. And I'm sorry I feel so blunt about that, but that's just, like you just said, it is what it is. And when you say, that's what I wanted to hear you say that we're not just putting this here for now. This is something we're actually going to follow through, go through, and see it to an end to where our children become great again. They're great, but the greatness needs to show to where we become number one again. When it
Oh yeah,
comes to
because we're going to come back again and show you the next quarter benchmark to show you what we're doing, and so it will not be an autopsy. It will continue to be an examination. We are working with a sense of urgency, and that urgency is being pushed down through the schools. But we wanted to let the board know, so you don't think that everything is all right when it's not.
appreciate it, 'cause this
It's
is
not all
scary.
right. It's not all right. And we do need to work aggressively to fix it.
I appreciate it because this is scary. This is
Yes.
Good.
I had a question. Did the George Mason tutors, have they started yet?
Yes.
Okay.
They started in October.
How is that going so far?
It's going really well. I was actually there last Thursday, and the way those kids are interacting and seeing them work, it's magic. It's magic. I took a few pictures that I put on my Twitter page, but those kids are in tune. They're writing, they're working out problems, or they're reading, and they are right there with the tutors. They aren't distracted. They didn't really even realize I was in the room. So it is really working well. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So I just wanted to make a comment. I don't want to minimize these scores above 70 points.
Sure.
But I do want to say that I realize that these are quarter one scores.
Yes,
And I realize that that's the beginning of the year.
Yes.
And as an educator, I realize that it's a race, and we're at the beginning of the race. Now, if these were scores that you were giving me in April, like my heart would be in my throat and I'd be a little bit nauseous. But I get it. I get that this is our starting point, and that
Yes.
you're telling us we've got a ways to go.
Yes.
If you come back to us at Q2 and we haven't really budged that much, I'm going to start to be a little bit concerned. So if anybody is watching, and for those of you that are here, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that these are our first set of scores for the beginning of the year. And so these are third graders in their September, October, November, third month of school. And when they take their SOL, they're third graders in their ninth month of school.
Yes.
So, you know, oftentimes when I taught in the public schools, the benchmarks were written at the level as if it were the end of the school year. Those passages and such were written already at the end of the year level to get the children ready for that level of difficulty, to bring them up to that level. So they're being exposed to that so that they're ready for it at the end of the year. So while 18% or 26% isn't great, it's a starting point.
Correct.
And we're moving towards that goal of getting it above 55%.
Correct.
So these aren't the end marks.
No. This
So
is-
I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This is the starting point.
Right.
This is right out of the gate.
Right.
This is our kind of, here's where we are.
Right.
We've got these brutal facts in front of us. So this is where we know our deficiencies are.
Right.
And now we know what prescription we
Yes.
need to provide based on what it is that we've been diagnosed with.
Yes.
Okay?
So
Yes.
what would the scores look like at the end of last year to show the development or the final end of year scores with these beginnings? Like,
That
for
would have been the
example,
55% pass rate that, right?
The
What I'm
fif-
saying, if like
well-
a second grade finishes up at this level, we're now looking at them as
Right.
third
Well,
graders.
remember, second grade did not take an SOL, and second grade.
No, but
we-
they took PALS and all of that.
Yeah, yes.
I'm talking about the PALS data and all of that.
Right,
'cause that
that's what I
leads
had
into
asked
the-
Yeah,
earlier,
we're gonna
that they're
bring
gonna
that
bring back in
back to
December.
you in December.
Right, but
so
I'm
you can
saying
see
last
compare-
year's end
Yes.
compared to the next year's first.
Yes,
I think that would be useful as well.
yes. That's what we will bring
Because
back.
it's a great explanation that you said that it's the beginning of the year, but my point is if they weren't doing very well at the end of last year, well then this beginning point here is a double thing for us to consider. It's not just that it's the beginning of the year, it's that there was a deficiency at the end of last year as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand where you're going.
Yeah, just all the data together would be just useful.
Right, but these benchmarks are aligned with the SOLs. And these third graders, this is the first time that they're seeing the SOLs. So there's really nothing before that.
I'm talking about stars and PALS.
Okay, so you're on a different slide. Okay.
I'm just saying, your point is valid for
Okay.
everything, I thought. I thought your point is valid for PALS and for stars. I
Okay.
was just saying, since we probably have stars and PALS data, it would be useful to have all of the levels of comparison.
Gotcha.
And STAR, this is the first year that we're implementing STAR.
So we won't have
So
stars,
we wouldn't have
but we will
STAR,
have PALS.
But we would have
Okay.
PALS, yes, yes. Next slide, please. So this is math. 44% pass rate for SOL testing last year, and this is where we are with math. 15% third, 15% fourth, and 11% fifth. Okay. Next slide, please. Now we move on to science. 30% was the pass rate for SOLs for the 22-23 school year. If you take a look at science, 8% third, 4% fourth, and 13% for grade 5. And the only SOL that is taken in elementary school for science is fifth. So that 30% only represents fifth grade. But the fifth grade assessment is based on fourth and 5th grade standards. Okay. Questions? Next slide, please. And at 4th grade, we have our benchmark for Virginia Studies, which is 34% for the 22-23 school year, and our benchmark, we had 6% pass rate. Okay. Next slide, please. So now we move on to J.P. King Middle School. For the 22-23 school year, English SOLs had a 61% pass rate. Right now, based on our quarter 1 benchmark, we have 15% pass rate for English in grade 6, and grade 7, 23%. Next slide. Taking a look at math, 28% pass rate was our SOL pass rate last year. And we had 0% of our students in 6th grade who passed quarter 1 benchmark, and only 9% in 7th grade who passed that quarter 1 benchmark. Next slide, please. And looking at science, we have science 6%, 4% for grade 6 and 0% for grade 7. And the only grade level that takes an SOL for science is grade 8th, and that will be shown in your high school data. Next slide, please. So now we go to Franklin High School. They had a combined score of English and writing at 70%, but here's where we stand at benchmark 1 for quarter 1. 0% of our students in 8th grade passed the SOL, passed the benchmark. 0% in 9th grade, 4% in 10th grade, and 20% in 11th grade.
So how does this data then go back to what Carrie was saying? Like, this is because it's the beginning of the year? Or is there something else that you could say, Carrie?
I would say for 8th grade, it matters, but for 9th, 10th, and 11th, we go by semesters, yes?
And the 8th grade is by semester as well.
Oh, is 8th grade being done by semester as
Yes,
well?
because because they only have one more benchmark.
So this is the halfway mark, not the quarter mark.
This is correct. This
Right.
is the halfway mark for high school.
Right.
There's only the quarter mark for the elementary and the middle. This is the halfway point. We have 3 other attempts for our elementary and our middle school.
Right.
But for high school, we only have quarter 2, and then they go into SOL testing in January for 2nd semester to start in February.
Right. So this would be like if we were halfway through the year at the elementary school. So it's very different.
So this one, you'd be able to say that, yes, this is like heart in your throat.
Yeah. This one I'm like,
It's just hard to believe zeros. It's hard to believe zeros.
And I have to offer this explanation. One of the things that I think I want to make very clear is that when we assess students, the test is written at the cognitive level of the verb outlined in the curriculum framework. So it's not just teaching part of the standard. The entire standard has to be taught. So when they say you have to teach it in the content, but at the right cognitive level. And a lot of times when we see the assessment, as you stated, Ms. Johnson, it's already written. The assessment is written at the cognitive level. It's written. So we have to take a look at where is the gap. Is it in the taught or is it in the written? The written is already clear. It's the standard. The tested is already aligned to the written. There may be a gap in the taught, and that's where we have to address the gaps. And we're working to address those gaps.
Right, because the curriculum is very clear. The
Very
Virginia
clear,
Department of Education does an excellent job in outlining exactly what they expect.
Yes, ma'am. So as I said, the written is the written. It's already aligned to the test. And we use the standards from Performance Matters. So we are not making up a test that's easier. We're using the standards. We're using Performance Matters, which has all of their assessments based on the standard at the cognitive level they would see on the SOL.
Right.
So with that being said, we are holding the teachers accountable, correct?
Administrators as well, ma'am.
I was getting to that part. I just wanted you to say yes first to the teachers.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody has to,
Because it's a trickle formation when you look at it. Because if the teachers are being held accountable, and administrators, which in plain English, principals, assistant principals, being held accountable. This, unfortunately, Carrie, now that you've explained it and you've broken it down, I can sit down. But this here, this is my heart in my throat. Because this is high school. This is high school right here. This tells me right here, especially when it comes to English. We're not teaching Ebonics. We're teaching English. And with these scores, they're not leaving us with English. I'm just going to sit here in silence. I'm going to sit here in silence.
Well, the accountability is in the classroom, but then it's in the administration, and then it's in the superintendent's office, and then it's us. So we all have a big piece in this.
Yes.
And listening to my colleagues on the board, it's obvious we have a good understanding of this situation and a high level of interest in improving it. And I know you're working very hard, and I know Dr. Carter is working hard.
Yes, sir.
So we look forward to the next testing cycle to see how we're doing.
Yes, sir.
I know you are. I know you're just working as hard as you can go.
Yes, thank you. Math, we were at a 79% pass rate for the 22-23 school year. As it sits, 0% past the Algebra 1 benchmark, 5% past the Algebra 2 benchmark, and 0% past the geometry benchmark.
how does that make any sense? Because math has always been something we're strong at. So how are these benchmarks? Like, explain the data?
So I will explain. When you see 79% and you see 0%, this is a one shot. Whereas with the SOLs, you get multiple attempts. So by the time the data is disaggregated and brought from the state, they only take they take that high score. So if a child failed 3 times and they are a senior, they get to take it multiple times because they must have at least one math verified credit, which means they have to pass at least one math SOL in high school to graduate. And so what you see in the math data is multiple attempts of students who are taking that test more than one time. This is first attempt.
So would you be able to bring back the data that shows how many times students have taken a test? Like, would you be able to say 20% of our students passed first time, or 6% needed to take it 2 times or 3 times, or just whatever that data is? I'd love to see that.
I certainly will work with Ms. Stratton to pull that data, because we would have to pull it out, because everyone doesn't get a first attempt that year. They may get their second attempt the next school year. So it may be their senior year that we would have multiple attempts. So we'll try to give you as much data as we can because it's not a simple because at the 8th grade, you get one time.
Right,
And
especially
what
for
I
Algebra 1.
and what I think is going to happen is that now we've reinstituted Math 7, which when they went from grade 6 to Algebra 1, there's that missing piece in math. So we're filling in that gap right now. So now you will have a math cohort who is in grade 7 right now who will go into Math 8. Those students who meet a certain criteria and have the capacity to go into Algebra 1 in 8th grade, those students will go. So what you're going to see is a stronger math cohort, which will improve these skills and improve these scores. But right now, we're still dealing with the deficit of students who never took Math 7.
So the 79% rate, I'm just making sure I understand what you're saying. It's a cumulative.
It's a cumulative. It's for all of the math scores and those who had multiple attempts.
That year, though.
That year.
So you're saying within that year that you're saying there's multiple attempts, or you're saying they're benefiting from the fact that that might be their second attempt of taking the test in that particular year?
Correct.
Okay, I think I
Correct.
understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Next slide, please. And so for science, we had a combined score of 36%. And as you can see, right now we stand at 5% in ecology, 5% in biology, and 0% in chemistry.
So in theory, though, we should benefit from retaking the test in all of the
Correct.
areas.
High school, yes, will benefit from retest because they have to have at least one SOL in science.
Well, I mean, I'm not great at data, but it just seems like we must be doing something good in math, even if it is retakes.
Correct.
Because compared to science, there's a big difference.
Correct. And just as a disclaimer, science, when they went through the revision of the standards, they were low across the state. Not everyone was at 36%, but everyone was low across the state. We're hoping now that we've had a full testing cycle and a full year of implementation that you will see those scores go up because last year was our first full cycle of testing with the new standards. Okay.
That is true, the science.
Yeah. Science has been a struggle
changed a
across
lot.
the state. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Next slide, please. And our history benchmark, 32% last year across the board.
But history didn't change.
History did not change. No, history did not change. So we have 4% in U.S. History 1, World History 1, 23%, and in our 8th grade, we have 3% at Civics and Economics. Next slide, please. So here's some retesting data for you.
Hey.
We have summer opportunities for our seniors as well. So not only do they get to retake during the school year, for those students who need remediation in the summer, they also have an opportunity. So as you can see, we had 100%. We have 14 students who were eligible for retest in Algebra 1 this summer, and 14 passed. We had one student, of course, who was eligible for retesting, and that student passed. World History 1, we had 23 eligible, 23 and 100% of those passed. So as you can take a look, when those students have had multiple opportunities, they receive the remediation that they need, you see the students who are eligible to test, they have met with some success. And what you see here is our writing fall SOL based on this fall's SOL data. Those scores just recently dropped. So right now what we have is 8th grade writing, 7 out of 30 students, 23% passed. our end-of-course writing, which is grade 11. Out of the 49%, 14 passed. And then we have a combined score of 27%. We don't have an opportunity to retest in writing for grade 8, but we do have multiple opportunities to retest in writing for our seniors, and then those students who have an opportunity to retest in writing using work keys. So we have multiple measures for our high schoolers, not 8th grade, but high schoolers. Even though we use 8th grade in high school, that's a state designation. But 8th grade in a federal designation is still considered middle school, even if it is housed at the high school. So they don't get the multiple attempts.
Can we go back a slide to see the writing scores for the high school for quarter 1? I'm just curious to see how they match up to those.
I think you
Right here, English.
So this portion was only the reading portion for this benchmark.
Okay, because it says writing.
Right, but this was the
So-
pass rate for last year. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, but you're telling me that this is only
Correct.
English. This is only reading.
This is only the reading portion for the benchmark.
So we didn't do a benchmark in writing even though the students were taking the writing SOL?
Because during the benchmark period was the week of the actual writing test. So there was not an opportunity because they took that in October. So benchmarks came around the same time.
So we didn't do any sort of standardized testing or whatever
No.
prior to them doing that. And not that I'm saying that 20-some% is great. It's better than 0.
I agree.
So I was just wondering if they got 23 or 28 or whatever it was on the actual state test versus 0 on our test. But you're telling me that we didn't even test them in writing
No.
at the district level.
No.
Okay.
Next slide. So what are our next steps and what are some of the things that we are implementing? As I stated earlier, we have 3 reading specialists, which based on our size, the state only requires 1. So we have 3, which is really a gift. And 4 reading interventionists that are working with our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. Our Tier 3 students are students who need the most intervention, and our Tier 2 students would be those students who have a slight deficit and who need some extra help. So we are working with all of those students who have been identified with PALS. We're doing walkthroughs as a central office team to monitor and provide teachers timely feedback based on what we're seeing in the classroom to ensure that even though we're looking at those standards, we recognize that there is a gap and a misalignment with the written, tested, and taught. So our feedback is based on those indicators. Our curriculum specialists are working daily with teachers. They're in there with lesson planning, providing job-embedded professional development, working one-on-one sessions to ensure that teachers know how to write adequate lesson plans. We have developed now a new lesson plan template for the school division because without a well-written plan, we are not going to be able to have that execution of the written, taught, and tested. We have to have a plan, and currently we have multiple plans that are being utilized. So we need to standardize that process so that everyone is working using a lesson plan that is aligned to state standards, but also has the elements that the state says makes a good plan. We
Do you mind if I ask a quick question
Yes.
about the lesson plans?
Yes.
So is this in a way going to help teachers with their time? Because there's been some feedback that the way that the state requires lesson plans to be constructed is super time consuming. this allow the teachers to have time to just do other things that we need them?
So what we've done with this lesson plan is we have put all the elements that the state requires, but it's a condensed version so that the teachers can go step by step. The lesson plans that we have, they are not time consuming and should be able to be done within a reasonable amount of time. I do know the lesson plans that they were talking about from the state because in my previous work, I have seen that it is time consuming. We've taken the best of all of that and made it into a plan that's workable and teacher friendly.
So teachers should be really loving you right now for this one.
I wouldn't say love, but I am hoping.
Oh, they're not going to be loving it.
Go ahead, Ms. Tompkins. I was going to comment, but go ahead, Ms. Tompkins.
What I am hoping is that they would appreciate not only the simplicity of it, but also the thoughtfulness that is required to teach the standards in content and cognition. There is going to be no shortcut to improvement without a well thought out plan, and that is going to take some time. Is it going to take hours upon hours of time like the lesson plan that I know they're referring to? No, but it will require time in order for teachers to thoroughly teach those standards. There is going to be no shortcut for that.
I noticed that you have central office walkthroughs to monitor instructional delivery, but I didn't see on here that you have any expectation of an increase in administrative walkthroughs at any of the 3 schools.
So when I say the central office, we do the walkthroughs with the principal. So central office comes in, the principals walk with us.
Right, but on the days that you all aren't there, is there an expectation that the administrators at the 3 schools will be doing walkthroughs when you're not there?
Yes.
Because although I do recognize that, like at the elementary school and the middle school, we're in quarter 1, and at the high school we're at the halfway point, that doesn't mean that I don't think that we need to be stepping up our game.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. So my team and I, we've developed a walkthrough tool that's to be used for daily walkthroughs, and I'll defer to Dr. Carter regarding his expectations on the amount of walkthroughs that need to happen without us in the school building.
Yeah, so
Gotcha. I didn't know if there was
It's not
like a
just
number
walkthrough,
or
it's an
or a-
assessment, right?
It-
Aren't
the-
the administrators do assessments in the classroom?
it's a walkthrough, which is 10 to 15 minutes, and then you have the formative, not the formative, the formal, the words I was using, formal assessments, which is 45 minutes or longer. And so they have a template that they have that was given to them the first of the year, and we review it every Monday about timelines of where you're supposed to be and where is it.
So should that be added to the next steps here? Or is it just
That can be put into the next steps.
Yes.
But trust me, we go over it. We just went over it at our last principals meeting on Monday. Where's the level of frequency of walkthroughs? Where is the level of frequencies of formal assessments? Where is it? And it's going to be reflective in their evaluation based on their frequency. And some administrators I've already started, they're mid-year right now.
Well, because we need the data. We need to know that the teachers are getting the administrative, and hopefully I'm getting the words right, oversight and support.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's part of the next steps.
Oh,
expectation, right?
that does need to be placed in there. But yes, trust me, I make that a weekly on my radar. Where are you? What's the issues? And then a lot of times it comes for them operations over instructional. So meaning where do you spend most of your day of why you cannot get into the classroom? And knowing how to maneuver that and navigate that. And quite honestly, professional development is needed on how to do that. And that's where we come in. not only through the walkthroughs and deliveries, but also how to manage their time. And
Maybe
also,
all that can be added into
yeah,
those
and
steps.
how to manage their time. And then what also needs to be added to this is the feedback.
Yes.
What do you tell the teacher? And can you grow the teacher? If they can't grow the teacher, the central office, we have to instill that into the principal and assistant principals so they know how to grow the teacher.
And so this is not an exhaustive list, you know, as as
Let's
you
make it exhaustive. No, I just wanted to make sure because this looked very central office heavy, and I just wanted to make sure that you all realize that we don't expect it all to be just on your shoulders.
Of course.
And like, for instance, like I have a new principal at my facility, and I don't teach in public school. I teach at a correctional facility,
Sure.
but we still have walkthroughs, and she still does formal observations. And you know, one of the things that she brought when she came is like there's a red folder in the filing cabinet right inside my door that accountability for her is that when she comes into our classroom, even if it's just for a brief conversation about a student or whatever, like she'll document it because she realized that in previous positions that when she was asked like, what are you doing as far as, you know, being with the teachers or whatever, she wasn't always able to document that. So that was something that she brought with her, just so that even if it wasn't like written down on paper for the informal, you know, walkthrough or the formal observation, like she could say like, I have been into this classroom and I've discussed this student or what have you.
Yes.
So this looked very central office heavy
Yeah.
and not very school heavy.
Right.
And at each of the schools that we saw, you know, we saw very low percentages. And from my perspective, I would expect that some of that burden goes to the administrators at those schools.
Absolutely. And you know, every time you do a presentation, you forget something. So I made notes on my own little sticky notes of things to remember to share. We have of course, a weekly principals meeting, and principals receive feedback on walkthroughs. They receive professional development every Monday. So, and I provide some of that professional development. Some of the other directors, we come in and we talk about that walkthrough data. So the principals are held accountable for what's happening. We are there. They are the first line of defense. We are there to support them.
Okay.
So when the teachers' first observations, that happens with the principal, not us.
Okay.
And so this is just what we are doing to support the work of the principals.
Gotcha.
We also have, we're working with principals on creating their comprehensive needs assessment so that they are having to look at their data. Every time we have our principals meeting, we talk about looking at your data. What does it look like? So we'll review this with the principals again at our principals meeting on Monday so that we can talk about what are you seeing happening? What do you attribute some of those scores to? So those are the kinds of hard conversations that we're having with principals every Monday during our meeting so that they are aware that we're there to support you. But the ultimate responsibility for setting the culture and climate, not just how we treat each other, but the academic culture and climate is ultimately incumbent upon the principal and the leadership within that building. We support that vision.
Sounds like it's a team effort.
Yes.
Yes, it's definitely a team effort, and you know, I don't sugarcoat it. We're working on will and skill. It's will and skill.
Like you
Some
said at
some things are a will problem, some things are a skill problem,
Yeah, we can fix it.
and we've got to work on both.
You said that at convocation.
Yeah.
So that concludes my formal
Is that all you
presentation.
have?
I think I've been up here long enough. Are there any other questions that I could answer for you at this time?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate the showcase of data. It, to me, is one of the first times that we've really had it broken down and had it so early on. And I appreciate your work with it because I know it took a lot of hours to do. So I appreciate the transparency.
Well,
and thank you, Dr. Carter, as well.
I appreciate your thank you, but I have to thank our Director of Assessment and Accountability because she mines the data. I interpret it. She is the one who gets this presentation together. So as you can see, I said compiled by, presented by, because Ms. Stratton is excellent at giving us all the data so that I have the opportunity to interpret and share what she has compiled. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Phillips?
Good evening, board members, Dr. Carter, my fellow FCPS staff and community. If I'm coming up before you, it's all about attendance. So we're going to look at where we stand as of the first 8 weeks of school, which was through October the 26th. So we're going to start with SP Morton. Last year's enrollment, we were at 493. As of October 26th, we were at 501. Now keep in mind, 7 of those are students that we have enrolled for services that are what I would call pre-K. They are not of age yet that they would be in Bright Starts or in our pre-K environment, but they do warrant services through the school division, so they're included in that 501. That 501 does also include, doing the math in my head, 64, I believe it is, pre-K students. Which do not count in our ADM numbers. So we're slightly up. If you take out those 7, we're a little down, and that number has dropped by 3 since this was done. Year-to-date attendance, as you see, last year we were at just over 88%. As of October 26th, we were at just over 92%. So our numbers are trending upwards, which is a good thing. Students, last year we had 1 that was dropped for attendance. As of today, we have none that we have dropped for attendance. 8 unrecoverable students last year. A number of unrecoverable students as of October 26th were none. We do have 3 right now that are unrecoverable, and we're working on those diligently. I will say I am seeing with the attendance data a lot of our students that we were having recurring issues with last year, we're seeing a lot of those that we're not having issues with this year. That's a good thing. The ones that, like the 3 that I mentioned that were unrecoverable, were students we had massive issues with last year. So we do still have some of those high flyers, and we're working diligently on those, but we're not seeing the extensive number that we had last year, which is a good thing. And just to keep in mind for those that weren't part of this conversation last year or may not remember, so unrecoverable means that they've already missed what would be 10% of our total school year, which is above that 16%. We're at 162 days. So we say 16 because if something happens and we have an inclement weather day or 2, that's going to put us at 160 to where 10% would be 16. So we're really targeting that 16 number instead of 17. Next slide. So JP King, last year we were sitting at 162 students. This year we're at 160, so we're pretty much holding level from where we were last year. Year-to-date attendance last year we were sitting at 90.43%. As of October 26th, we were at 93.44. They have had some really, really good days of attendance. They actually, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, had a day where they only had 3 students out in the whole school for the day. Wow. That's huge. That's huge. As of last year, same as this year, no students had been dropped for attendance. Last year, they were already sitting at 2 unrecoverable students. This year, as of October 26th, they were sitting at none. And I think right now they only have 1 that's getting very close to being unrecoverable. And next we'll move on to Franklin High School. So I am just getting my feet wet with Franklin High School. So I transitioned to working over there starting this week. So I'm getting acclimated, working with the team over there, and they have some really good processes in place. I will put that out there. They're doing some things that we're having some conversations about that might need to be implemented throughout the division. So we're going to be looking at that as well. Their enrollment as of last year was at 387. This year, as of October 26th, they were at 381, which is where they're holding right now. Year-to-date last year was at 90.63. This year, on October 26th, they were at 93.69. Their numbers are dramatically down. I pulled the list a couple days ago, yesterday, as a matter of fact, and it was where last year we probably had 4 pages of students we already had that we were watching for attendance. This year it's less than a whole page. So that's a huge improvement. Students dropped for attendance, same now as last year, none. Last year they were already at 4 unrecoverable students at the 8-week mark, and this year they are only sitting at 1, which is one that we have continuously had attendance issues with from year to year. All right, next slide if you can, Ms. Davis. So triumphs and challenges, and some of this it's like hitting repeat. We do now have 2 full-time truancy officers. I am covering grades pre-K through 5 and grades 9 through 12. And Miss Ashley Becerra just joined us 2 weeks ago, and she is covering grades 6 through 8. And she is doing a tremendous job at getting to know the staff, getting to know the students, building those relationships. And I think she's going to be a great fit with those students. We have some good processes that we have established, and we now actually have a really good working relationship with the courts. I was actually there today filing some petitions with the magistrate. Talk to the clerk frequently. We're putting some processes in place as well so that we can make sure we know when things are going on the docket. Items are actually being put on the court docket much sooner than they were before. Last year, I filed a petition in January, and it did not get on the docket until July, which is not acceptable in my opinion. Now, the judge one particular judge has asked that all of the truancy cases go on his docket, and he is setting 1 day aside every month for truancy court. So we have those where as long as we file them by a certain point in the month, they will be on the next month's docket.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Which judge is this?
Judge Weiser. Yes, he's been great to work with. I was in court last week for some that we had carried over from the summer, from last year, and he's pretty much to the point. He's not taking anything from anyone. I had one that we took before court, and the parent really had not quite met his challenge. So I asked that he give them another 30 to 60 days of attendance to see if we can correct what issues we're still seeing. And he didn't want to do it, but he said he would concede this one time because I asked. Outside of that, he's being very no-nonsense. When we come back, no unexcused absences, not a single tardy, or we are going to trial. So, challenges, like I said, sometimes it's hitting that repeat button. Inability to make contact with families. We've got bad phone numbers, non-working phone numbers. We have parents that won't answer the door when we come. We have parents that are blocking our phone number so that our calls won't go through. So there are some challenges there that we are encountering, but we still push through and work through them.
I have a question. So are we still going along with social services? Because I know last year when there was truancy, social services, it actually affected their benefits.
Yes,
for the parents.
and it should still affect. I have not gotten a cycle through to us yet this year. Social services is having a little bit of a challenge right now. They are tremendously understaffed, and that may be contributing to that.
Okay.
But yeah, they hopefully we'll start seeing that funnel back through soon. And it may be as well that they want to give it some time to get some attendance data in, because if they'd sent one in September, it may be likely that there had not been any time to incur any absence at all. So they may be waiting for some of that data to come in as
Well,
well.
I was just asking if that was still happening, because I know it happened last year.
Haven't seen any yet this year.
That's what I wanted to know, was it still in place?
It's in place, and we have reached out to the Department of Social Services for that specific.
Because I know they are shorthanded. I do know that. They are.
We are waiting for that list to come in.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Any questions?
It's obvious you've done a lot of work
Yes, thank you.
and
you.
turned this whole thing around.
Well, we're working on it. We're
Yeah.
working on it. We
Thank
won't
you
change
very
it all overnight, but we're
But
chipping
90
away at it, which is the important thing.
Well, I think SP Martin enjoyed their donuts the other day for attendance.
Yes, that was going to be the next thing I was going to talk about. So we were challenged this year, and I'm going to say challenged because it has been a challenge, with implementing an attendance incentive program for our students
Yes.
from the ground up because we didn't have anything in place. So working with Dr. Ricks, I was tasked with creating the foundation for that program and what it was going to look like, the parameters and everything for it. So the first that our kids have seen was the monthly incentive. So month one, we had a painting party at each grade, at each school. Elementary and the middle school got to paint pumpkins, which they absolutely loved. The high school students got to paint canvases, which they were extremely bummed they didn't get pumpkins. Who would have known? So mental note for that for next year.
Okay.
Then for the month of October, and we're trying to switch it up a little bit every month on what we're looking at, just so they don't try to cheat the system any. So we're trying to switch it up a little bit. So for the month of October, we looked at instead of percentage, we looked at the least number of absences. Because if you've got a classroom that has only 10 kids in it and one kid is out, that throws our percentage way off. So we switched it up for that month, and for October we did donuts. And some of the students really got into looking at the donut and going up and counting the sprinkles to see how many sprinkles they had on the donut, which was a lot to keep up with. But we had actually one of the schools, SP Morton had a 3-way tie for first place. So then we had to look at the percentage. So we recognized at least the top 2 at each school, and they got donuts, and they enjoyed their donuts. I think I barely got the box open that they were all in the donut consumed and done. So, and then for the next incentive, we're looking at November and the first week of December, since November's a short month, and we only have the couple weeks in December, so we're looking at the first week. And the winning class will get gingerbread and cider. We were talking about hot chocolate, but we don't want any little accidents with some warm liquids. So we're looking at gingerbread cookies and cider for them.
Thank you.
And we're working on some other things that are going into play with the incentive program. We're looking at attendance auctions. They are earning bucks every day that they're in school.
Pony bucks. Thank you for bringing them back.
Yes, pony bucks, and we're doing it electronic, so there's no paper to get lost, because
But
little
still,
kids lose
Thank you
everything.
for bringing it back, 'cause especially in SP Morton, when they had it a while ago, they were able to buy erasers and books and different things. So I appreciate that.
And we'll be growing that, what they can utilize and how they can utilize those bucks as we go along. Keep in mind, we're in a pilot year, so we're kind of building that. JP King has their Mustang bucks, and then
Right.
of course the high school has their Bronco bucks. The high schools, we decided the easiest way for them, because sending out to each kid what their balance is every week is over 1,000 emails, and
Right.
we need another full-time person to do all that. So what we're looking at is that at the high school, it's posted outside the cafeteria, and it just has their student ID number, so they only they know which one is theirs, so they can find their student ID and find what their balance
So
is.
are they able to use those in the stable, the store that's actually in the high school?
At this time, no.
Okay.
That may be something that down the line we implement. Right now, they're strictly for the attendance auctions that we'll be holding.
Okay.
So first one is coming up, remind me, Dr. Ricks, December. Before break. So we're working on that right now and getting all that in place. Any questions?
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Good job.
you.
That concludes the superintendent's report. Oh, wait a minute, 4.6. Thank you. Jumping ahead, sorry. This is basically referring to citizens' time and how citizen time will be structured moving forward. And so I am asking the board to approve how the new processes for citizens' time moving forward.
I think the board has had a chance to look at this and comment, and it's been through our legal counsel for their approval. So, do we have a motion to approve?
Also move.
I second.
Wow. Any discussion?
Just one, the phone number being fixed,
Yeah, we'll
Yes.
correct that.
and that's it. Just the correction of the phone number. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I just wanted to add on here how important it is to the board that we do have citizens' time and that we had, like Bob said, we had the legal counsel help us in creating the draft and making sure that it was applicable for federal and state law and all of that, just so that it's very clear. There shouldn't be any miscommunication or misunderstanding on how citizen time works. So I'm glad that we have this. I'm all about very clear policies so that everybody's on.
I second that.
Thank you, Arvin. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. That policy will be posted on our website on Monday, and we will make copies for anyone who wants them. Thank you, Dr. Carter. Business by school board members. I have a couple things. Next week, several of us will be in Williamsburg for the VSBA conference. The week after that, our school system will be closed for the week of Thanksgiving. And the week after that, we will have our first formal days of our strategic plan. So we look forward to that. Our next board meeting will be in this room on December the 7th, at which time our new citizens' time policy will be in effect. Board members, anything else?
I just appreciate the discussion that we had today.
Yes. We're so proud of our staff, all of you sitting out there. You do such good work, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you all. Hearing no other business, do we have a motion to adjourn? Carrie?
I was waiting for Carrie. She usually jumps on that.
I so move.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're